Let's all raise a glass to the biggest embarrassment in this family. The words don't just land, they echo. The room goes quiet for half a second, just enough for everyone to realize she's serious. Then laughter. Awkward at first, then louder. Forced. And every single pair of eyes turns to Amara Ndeke, 32. Have you ever been humiliated so publicly you couldn't even react? Amara feels her fingers tighten around her glass, but she doesn't move, doesn't speak, because standing across from her, smiling like she just told the perfect joke, is her older sister, Clarisse Ndeke, 38. Perfect Clarisse. The one who never slips, never loses control, never says anything without a reason. So why now? Why this? Before Amara can even process it, Clarisse steps closer, calm, composed, almost gentle. And then she slides a thick, sealed folder across the table. "You'll understand why soon," she whispers, not loudly, not dramatically, quiet enough that only Amara hears it. And somehow that makes it worse, because now this isn't a joke. This is personal. The room starts moving again, conversations resume, glasses clink, someone changes the subject. But Amara? She's frozen. Her heart is racing, but her face stays still. She forces a smile, nods at someone speaking to her, pretends everything is fine. Inside, something feels off. This isn't just another one of Clarisse's subtle digs, not the usual backhanded compliments or quiet exclusions. No, this felt planned, calculated, like Clarisse had been waiting for the right moment to do this in front of everyone. And that folder? Amara doesn't open it. Not there. Not later that night either. She takes it home, places it on her kitchen table, walks past it again and again, because something about it doesn't feel like information. It feels like a trap. Days pass, then weeks. The folder stays exactly where she left it, unopened, untouched, but never ignored. And every time she looks at it, she hears the same words. "You'll understand why soon." So what was Clarisse trying to warn her about? Or worse, what was she trying to prove? 3 months later, Amara finds herself sitting in a silent office, hands folded, heart steady, but only on the surface. An estate lawyer places a familiar file on the table. The same one. He looks around the room and says, "Before we proceed, everyone needs to see this." And suddenly, that unopened folder doesn't feel like a choice anymore. It feels like a mistake. What if the one thing you were afraid to open was the one thing you needed to understand everything? Amara asked herself that question more times than she could count, because the truth is, she did eventually open the folder, just not right away. At first, she avoided it, walked past it, pretended it didn't exist. But curiosity has a way of creeping in when the world goes quiet, late at night, early mornings, in those moments when your thoughts get louder than your distractions. And Clarisse's voice? It never really left. "You'll understand why soon." Understand what? One night, after weeks of hesitation, Amara finally sat down at her kitchen table, the folder in front of her. Silence filling the room. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside wasn't what she expected. No dramatic letter, no clear explanation, just documents. Cold, technical, confusing. Bank statements, property records, transaction logs. At first glance, it looked like boring financial paperwork, but the deeper she looked, the stranger it felt. Names repeated, accounts linked, transfers that didn't quite make sense. And then, a form, a DNA test request form, blank, unsigned. Amara froze. Why would Clarisse give her this? What was she trying to suggest? Before she could even process that, something else slipped out from the back of the folder. A small folded note. She opened it. 4 words stared back at her. You were never meant to have any of this. No signature, but she didn't need one. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just confusing anymore. This was personal. But here's the thing. None of it actually explained anything. It raised more questions than answers. What this was she talking about? Money? Property? The family itself? And the DNA test, was that a threat or a clue? The next day, Amara tried to act normal. She visited her parents' house, sat in the same living room she grew up in, and casually brought it up. Mom, has there ever been anything unusual about our family records? Too vague, too careful, but her mother, Monique, reacted instantly. Too instantly. Her smile faded, her posture stiffened, and then she said something that didn't sit right. You shouldn't go digging into things that don't concern you. Not don't exist, not aren't real, just don't concern you. That was the moment something shifted, because now it wasn't just Clarisse acting strange, it was everyone. And suddenly, all those years of feeling slightly out of place, slightly different, didn't feel imagined anymore. They felt intentional. Weeks passed, the tension lingered, unspoken, unresolved, and then everything changed, because one morning, Amara's phone rang. Her father had collapsed. At the hospital, machines beeped softly, doctors moved quickly, family gathered in hushed panic, but Clarisse? She was calm. Too calm. She pulled Amara aside, her voice low, controlled, and said something that sent a chill straight down her spine. When the time comes, don't pretend you weren't warned. Warned about what? A warning only matters if you know what it's about. So what exactly had Clarisse been preparing her for? Because standing in that hospital hallway, watching nurses rush past and hearing machines hum behind closed doors, Amara realized something wasn't right. Not just with her father, with everything. The air felt heavy, conversations were short, controlled, like everyone was choosing their words too carefully. Except Clarisse. She wasn't grieving the way you'd expect. No tears, no panic, no visible fear. Just control. She spoke to the doctors, made decisions, directed their mother, even handled calls from extended family like she had already stepped into a role no one officially gave her. And the strangest part? No one questioned it. Have you ever noticed when someone takes control too quickly, it's because they were already prepared? That thought stayed with Amara because Clarisse hadn't just handed her it for no reason. She expected Amara to react, to panic, to expose herself somehow. But Amara didn't. And now, whatever plan Clarisse had, it was still moving forward. Uninterrupted. The next morning, the call came. Their father didn't make it. Just like that, everything shifted. Grief filled the room, but underneath it, something else lingered. Anticipation, because now there was only one thing left that could explain everything: the will. The days leading up to the reading felt surreal. People came and went, condolences blurred together. But Clarisse? She had changed again. The calm was back, the control was sharper, and this time there was something else in her expression. Relief. That's when Amara made a decision. She went home, picked up the folder, and brought it with her. She didn't fully understand it, but she knew one thing. It mattered. The day of the reading arrived. Family members filled the room, quiet whispers, curious glances. Amara took her seat, and then she saw it. The lawyer opening his briefcase, reaching inside, and pulling out a file. Not just any file. The same one. But this time, It wasn't hers. It was the original. There's a complication. That's how the lawyer begins. 4 simple words, and the entire room shifts. Have you ever felt the air change before something explodes? Because that's exactly what happens. Mr. Chumba, the estate lawyer, adjusts his glasses and places the file on the table with deliberate care. Not rushed, not hesitant, precise. Amara's eyes lock onto it instantly. Same thickness, same color, same quiet weight. The folder. But this one feels different. Official. Final. Across the table, Clarisse goes still. Not confused, not curious. Still. And that's when Amara knows whatever is inside that file, Clarisse already knows. Before we proceed with the reading of the will, Mr. Chumba continues, his voice calm but firm, there are documents that must be addressed. A pause. Long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. Then he opens it. Paper slides against paper. Soft, controlled. But in that silence, it sounds deafening. He begins reading. At the request of the late Daniel Ndeke, a review of financial activities tied to family-held assets was initiated. Murmurs ripple through the room. Amara feels her chest tighten. Financial activities? Her eyes flick briefly to Clarisse. Still calm, but her fingers gripping the edge of the table just a little too tightly. Then the next line drops. Several transactions were flagged due to irregular authorization patterns. Now the room isn't just curious, it's alert. Confused glances, whispered questions, and then names are mentioned. Accounts, transfers, properties, all linked to one person. Clarisse. Amara blinks. Once, twice. This isn't about her. It was never about her. The realization hits slowly, then all at once. The folder wasn't meant to expose Amara. It was meant to control her. Clarisse expected her to open it, see the DNA form, panic, and stay quiet, stay small, stay out of the way. But she didn't. And now, there's nothing stopping this from unfolding. Mr. Chumba continues. There is also a pending paternity inquiry. That lands differently. He doesn't elaborate yet, but the words hang in the air, heavy, unfinished. Clarisse shifts in her seat. For the first time since this began, she looks unsettled. Not defensive, not angry, unsettled. Then the lawyer closes the file halfway, looks directly at her, and asks, calmly, Ms. Ndeke, would you like to explain why your name appears on these transactions? The room goes silent. Every eye turns to Clarisse, the same woman who raised a glass and called her sister an embarrassment. Now, she can't even raise her voice. Her mouth opens, stops, opens again. Nothing. No explanation, no control, just silence. And in that moment, for the first time in her life, Clarisse Ndeke looks completely powerless. Silence like that doesn't last forever. Eventually, the truth forces its way in, and when it does, it doesn't come gently. It comes all at once. Mr. Chumba doesn't wait for Clarisse to recover. He simply opens the file again and continues, calm, precise, unstoppable. At the direction of the late Daniel Ndeke, a private audit was conducted over the past 6 months. 6 months. That means before the dinner, before the insult, before the folder. This had already begun. Findings confirm that significant sums were redirected from family accounts into privately controlled entities under Miss Clarisse Ndeke. A quiet gasp breaks somewhere in the room. But he's not finished. Additionally, multiple property titles were altered without full consent. Documentation indicates intentional concealment. There it is. Not a misunderstanding, not an error. Intentional. Clarisse finally speaks, but her voice isn't the one everyone knows. It's thinner, fragile. There's an explanation. But even she doesn't sound convinced. Because the evidence is already laid out. Clear, documented, verified. And then comes the part Amara has been unconsciously bracing for. The file also contains a paternity inquiry initiated by the deceased. The room tightens again. Mr. Chumba looks directly at Amara this time. However, regardless of the outcome, the late Mr. Ndeke made one instruction absolutely clear. He pauses, then finishes. Amara Ndeke is to receive her full share of the estate, unconditionally. Just like that, the weight shifts. Not erased, but redefined. Because this was never about removing her, it was about protecting her. Daniel knew. He knew what Clarisse was doing. He knew what she was planning. And instead of confronting her in chaos, he set the truth in motion, carefully, legally, so it would surface exactly like this, in the open, where it couldn't be denied. Amara exhales slowly. Not relief, not yet. Something deeper. Clarity. Because now, everything makes sense. The distance, the tension, the folder. Clarisse wasn't exposing her. She was trying to control the narrative before it exposed her. And now what? She can't. The consequences come quickly. The estate is frozen pending investigation. Legal proceedings begin almost immediately. Clarisse is formally questioned, audited, isolated. Family members who once admired her start pulling away. Her control disappears piece by piece. Even Monique, silent for so long, breaks. Not defending, not denying, just breaking. And Amara, she walks out of that office with the same folder in her hands, but it doesn't feel heavy anymore. Weeks later, she sits alone in her apartment, the city quiet outside, the file open in front of her one last time. This time, she finishes what was started. She signs the DNA request. Not for money, not for proof, but for peace. Because some truths are meant to shake your world, and others, they give you the power to finally stand on your own. Amara leans back, exhales, and for the first time in a long time, she feels steady. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is finally clear. And that's enough.